So I have some amazing news. The Fifth Circuit has just ruled in the Mock v. Garland ATF pistol brace case, and they found that the ATF's rule on pistol braces was in fact invalid, and therefore they have ruled against the ATF. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you agree that the ATF's pistol brace rule is invalid, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Blackout Coffee. Blackout Coffee has amazing coffee and they're huge Second Amendment supporters. If you buy one of their dedicated roasts for like FBC or GOA, some of those proceeds go directly to those toy organizations so they can file lawsuits like this one here against the ATF. So if you want great coffee and you want to support the 2A cause, I highly recommend Blackout Coffee. You can find them using the links down below. And if you use the code ARMSCHOLAR, you can get 10% off of your order. So like I mentioned in the intro, in this video, I have an amazing update for you, and it's in regards to the Fifth Circuit and their recent decision in the ATF pistol brace rule case. The Fifth Circuit just found that in the Mock v. Garland case, that the district court was incorrect in denying FBC and the other plaintiffs their original request for a preliminary injunction. This is a big win for the pro-2A side, and the ATF has once again suffered a huge loss. Now, originally in Mock v. Garland, the federal district court judge, Judge Reed O'Connor, denied a preliminary injunction which was requested by the plaintiffs. In that decision, Judge O'Connor stated that the court holds that plaintiffs have not carried their burden to demonstrate their substantial likelihood of success on the merits of any of their claims, and therefore he denied their motion for preliminary injunction. Judge O'Connor, in that opinion, stated that he believed what the ATF did in the pistol brace rule was likely within the ATF's statutory authority, and that it wasn't a violation of the APA. After that decision, FBC then did file an interlocutory appeal up to the Fifth Circuit. In that appeal, they challenged whether or not Judge O'Connor abused his discretion and whether or not he was wrong in denying their original request for a preliminary injunction. The Fifth Circuit did grant expedited review of this case and held a hearing in this case very recently. We've covered that. In the meantime, what the Fifth Circuit panel also did is they granted a temporary injunction which halted the pistol brace rule, and it was halted specifically for the plaintiffs and also FBC and their members. That was big, and a lot of people are currently still covered by that injunction, which covers FBC and their members. Then we saw multiple other lawsuits, which were also against the ATF and their pistol brace rule, the GOA case and the SAF case. They also sought similar injunctions, and ultimately those judges in those cases also granted limited injunctions, which protected those organizations and their members, essentially until the Fifth Circuit decided to rule in the Mock case. Well, we just received news that the Fifth Circuit has now ruled in the Mock case. After hearing the case, they have issued their decision, and the decision goes against the ATF, and the Fifth Circuit has found that Judge O'Connor should have granted the preliminary injunction, and therefore they are remanding it back down to Judge O'Connor for him to reconsider the case to redecide whether or not an injunction should be granted or not. Now, in the decision, the Fifth Circuit primarily found that the plaintiffs should have been granted an injunction on their APA claims. The court stated in their opinion that the ATF incorrectly maintains that the final rule is merely interpretive, not legislative, and thus not subject to the logical outgrowth test. The final rule affects individual rights, speaks with the force of law, and significantly implicates private interests. Thus, it is legislative in character. Then, because the final rule bears almost no resemblance in manner or kind to the proposed rule, the final rule fails the logical outgrowth test and violates the APA. This is huge because the Fifth Circuit is saying that the action by the ATF went beyond what they were supposed to do and they violated the APA. The Fifth Circuit also rejected the ATF's claim that the pistol brace rule is simply interpretive and that it just simply interprets the statute. Instead, the Fifth Circuit agreed with FBC that the pistol brace rule is legislative in nature. And since it was legislative in nature, the fact that they scrapped the worksheet 4999 in the proposed rule and then went to a completely new rule in the final rule, that means that the ATF must lose under the concept of the logical outgrowth test. Now, in simplest terms, the logical outgrowth and the test related to that determines when an agency can create a rule that differs in some ways from the original proposed rule. Under the test, notice of the changes from the proposed rule to the final rule is adequate if the changes are in line with the original scheme of the rule. Here, the argument is that the ATF cannot meet the logical outgrowth test. That is because the ATF drastically changed their strategy from the proposed rule, which had that worksheet 4999. They changed it from the worksheet to the final rule, which simply just had 6 vague standards that were just purely subjective and the ATF could do whatever they want. Therefore, the Fifth Circuit agrees with FPC that the ATF should have lost at the preliminary injunction stage, at least on the APA issue. The Fifth Circuit goes on to state that the present case is also not the only one involving a challenge to the final rule. Multiple judges within the circuit have already issued injunctions against the final rule, following the initial one issued here, enjoining enforcement against members of various gun rights organizations. It is also already uncertain how many persons are now subject to these injunctions or how the ATF would enforce the final rule against non-enjoined parties. There is a need for consistent application of the law, and this court may not have all the required facts. Accordingly, the district court is better situated to weigh the facts and fashion the most appropriate relief. For the foregoing reasons, we reverse the order denying a preliminary injunction and remand with instruction to consider that motion expeditiously. To ensure relative stability, we maintain the preliminary injunction pending appeal that the motions panel issued on May 23, 2023, as clarified by the merits panel on May 26, 2023. The court's injunction will expire 60 days from the date of this decision, or once the district court rules on a preliminary injunction, whichever essentially occurs first. We direct the district court to rule within 60 days. They go on to say that they are placing no limitations on the district court and they're giving no indication of what decision the district court should reach. So what does that mean? Well, the Fifth Circuit came to the conclusion that they believe Judge O'Connor committed an error by denying the preliminary injunction that was originally requested by FPC. Therefore, they are remanding the case back down to him for him to redecide the issue, and they believe that the district court is better situated to decide what type of relief is now needed going forward. However, the Fifth Circuit is leaving their temporary injunction in place for another 60 days, essentially just to maintain the status quo until Judge O'Connor does in fact rule on that new injunction. That means that Judge O'Connor will now have to rule on the pistol brace injunction, and he will have to do that within the next 60 days. However, the Fifth Circuit did state that they're not telling Judge O'Connor how he has to rule or what he has to use to come to that decision or what type of relief he needs to grant. Essentially, they're just putting it back in his hand saying, hey, we don't agree with how you originally ruled. We're remanding it back down to you. We believe that FBC probably should have won, at least on the APA claims, but we're going to leave that up to you to decide. Now, I know some of you are now wondering, okay, what does this mean for me? Well, if you're a member of FPC, GOA, SAF, or one of those organizations that had an injunction protecting their members, protecting those members who had pistol braces, essentially before this decision, that's still in place and it's going to be in place for another 60 days. So technically, if you're a member of those organizations, you're still protected for another 60 days, according to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit left their injunction in place, and Judge O'Connor will now decide on his decision whether or not he's going to issue a nationwide injunction, how his injunction essentially will be framed, and then we will see going from there how that will play out. But overall, this is a really good decision. It's a positive sign going forward. And once again, you have the Fifth Circuit striking down some of the ATF's overreach, finding that the ATF did not do this appropriately, that they at least violated the APA, and that the proposed rule was so drastically different from the final rule that this rule should be completely scrapped. So again, this is going to be very dynamic. We're going to see how the ATF responds to this. We're going to see maybe how this plays out going forward. But if I get any more information, I will let you all know. Also, if you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. As always, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys are directly impacting these videos, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.